two twin sisters, Emma and Isabella, both fell in love with me at the same time, and their rivalry escalated into a full-blown fight. Yet, I found myself paralyzed, unsure of how to choose between them. Emma's gentle kindness was heart-melting, while Isabella's vibrant energy was equally captivating. After all, we had grown up as childhood friends. From a young age, the two of them had treated me like a deity, obeying my every word. No matter whom I chose, the other would inevitably become an eternal regret in my heart. While I was agonizing over who my true love might be, they suddenly became cold and distant toward me. They stopped initiating conversations and even resisted any physical contact. Then came that night. They both walked in on me being confessed to by a classmate. To my shock, the sisters sneaked into my room that evening, pushed me onto the bed and said, "Ollie likes her, right? Why not choose us instead? How about both of us?" At that very moment, my roommate called me out to play basketball. I declined, fiddling absent-mindedly with two phone numbers in my hand. I knew they wouldn't pick up, and indeed, all I got was a busy signal. Sighing, I decided to head home and see if luck would favor me. At the entrance of my apartment complex, I ran into Victoria. Her radiant profile was partially hidden by the car window as she completely ignored me. I stepped forward to block her car, but she acted as if I were invisible. Through the car window, I could see her lips curl into a sweet smile as she spoke, though I couldn't make out the words. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. When I got home, as I feared, Isabella was nowhere to be seen. Only William greeted me warmly. I opened my mouth wanting to say something but stopped. William's eyes widened in concern. "Have those two girls been bullying you again?" "Don't worry, I've got your back." I quickly denied it, shaking my head. "No, Grandpa William, they're fine." I lowered my head, pressing down the sadness in my heart. When I was a child, my parents died in a plane crash, and William took me in, raising me like a little prince. He had repeatedly told his granddaughters, Victoria and Isabella, to take good care of me. And so, I had been cared for like this for 18 years. They would hug me when I was sad, stay up all night doing my homework when I was sick, cancel million-dollar business deals for my trivial needs, and even miss important competitions for my sake. I thought I could remain this blissfully happy forever, but everything came to a screeching halt on my 18th birthday. Victoria stopped answering my calls, and when we met, she was cold and distant. Isabella, on the other hand, stopped coming home altogether and avoided my touch like it was poison. I couldn't understand why. Still, I didn't want to burden William by depriving him of his granddaughters. So, after starting college, I chose to live on campus. Yet I still clung to the hope of rekindling the bonds of our youth, hoping to see them when I returned home. It seemed that hope was futile this time. After dinner, feeling dejected, I stepped outside. The family driver was waiting for me at the door, saying that Victoria had asked him to take me back to school. A surge of anger rose in me. She ignored me, yet now she wanted to feign concern, but I couldn't bring myself to refuse her. Reluctantly, I pestered the driver until he finally agreed to take me to where Victoria was. She was in an upscale private club, discussing a contract with a mature man in a suit. I suppressed the discomfort in my heart and quietly sat to the side. When the man left to use the restroom, I approached her. "Vicky," I said with a smile, "it feels like I haven't seen you in ages." Her cold gaze locked onto me, her brows furrowing tightly. "What are you doing here?" Victoria's voice was icy as she pulled out her phone. "Take Mr. Oliver back home," she ordered. Her indifference stung, but I forced a smile. Feeling unreasonably rejected, I wanted to retort, but before I could, the man returned. "Victoria, who's this boy?" "A friend of Mr. Lou's." His expression turned lecherous, making me uncomfortable. Victoria hooked her arm around his. "Just a kid from the family. He doesn't know better. Let's find another place to talk." She walked past me without a second glance. Numbly, I wandered the streets. Then a motorcycle screeched to a halt beside me. Isabella removed her helmet and asked, "Why are you out here alone? Didn't Victoria send someone to take you home?" Her words ignited the anger smoldering inside me. But being the mild-mannered person I was, I didn't know how to lash out. I turned away, unwilling to say more. My heart felt like it was being pulled apart by 1,000 invisible hands, aching and sore. "Ollie, are you throwing a tantrum?" she teased. The twins looked identical, and no matter how angry I was, seeing their faces always made my heart race. Isabella, however, had a much more fiery temperament than Victoria. She often got angry, but she had never spoken to me like this before. I froze for a moment, then glared at her. I don't need your concern. It's not like you answer my calls anyway. As I spoke, I tossed the pendant I'd been toying with in her direction. It was a charm Isabella had brought back for me from a temple during one of her competitions. I had worn it ever since. Perhaps because I had never been this upset before, Isabella seemed momentarily stunned. Then she climbed off her bike, grabbed my arm, and dialed a number. "Victoria, I'm sending you my location. If you're not here in 5 minutes, I'm taking Oliver with me." Her words made me struggle even harder. She had practiced martial arts since childhood, and with my heart pounding painfully, I was no match for her. In seconds, she had me pinned down. The pain in my chest left me gasping for air. "What's wrong, Bella?" she asked, finally noticing my pale face. "Bella, It's been a long time since I last fainted from my heart condition. I think the last time was in kindergarten, when a kid called me a stray dog taken in by the Williams family. I was so upset that I passed out. Ever since then, Victoria and Bella have treated me like a fragile treasure, always taking care of me. I've received so much kindness from the Williams family. Now that the sisters are so cold to me, I don't have the face to keep enjoying their resources. In my half-conscious state, I thought I heard Victoria and Bella arguing, even fighting, with William scolding them. I wasn't sure if I was dreaming. When I opened my eyes, the two sisters were sitting on either side of my hospital bed, their faces etched with exhaustion and worry. My heart ached with weariness. If my presence caused them so much inner turmoil, maybe I should be the one to end this. "Vicky, Bella, I'm fine now. You don't have to worry about me anymore," I said. The two of them immediately leaned closer, just like they used to. But I knew things would never go back to how they were. My distant tone must have thrown them off, as their faces grew visibly strained. Victoria tried to say something but stopped herself. "Vicky, Bella, I know we've all grown up. You both have your own lives and responsibilities now. I was the one being immature before, but I won't trouble you anymore. Have the driver take me back to school later." Even as I spoke, I didn't know what exactly I was trying to say, but I had made up my mind to let go. Hearing my words, the sisters' faces darkened even more. My heart condition is congenital, something I've had since birth. There's no cure, only ways to manage it by avoiding emotional stress. That's why I've learned to take things lightly. If they've chosen to let go of me, and I've done my part in trying, then it's time to move on. I remember when I was younger and my health was poor, Victoria was always more patient than Bella. She would coax me into taking my medicine, while Bella would just frown impatiently. As we grew older, Victoria took on the role of helping me with my schoolwork and tutoring me, while Bella would take me out for fun and buy me all sorts of collectibles. They were such a big part of my life growing up. I used to be afraid of Victoria. When I didn't do well in school, she would scold me with a stern face, asking why. But the moment I started crying, she'd panic and hold me, trying to console me. Over time, I got used to relying on, trusting, and admiring them. Back at school, I started receiving all sorts of nutritious soups every day. I knew they were sent by Victoria, though they mostly ended up being eaten by Nathan. Bella's way of caring was much more straightforward. She'd hand me a thermos full of food without saying a word before walking off. Their behavior, keeping their distance yet still entangled with me, started to irritate me. So I took out my phone and sent each of them a text message before putting it away and happily heading to the library with Nathan. I was lucky to run into Emma, the top student in our class, at the library. Shamelessly, I sat next to her, hoping to borrow her notes. Before I could even ask, Emma handed them over. "Ollie, here are the key points I've outlined. They'll help with the exam," she said. It was like being handed a pillow when you're sleepy, pure luck. I happily started reviewing with Emma's notes. I knew that if I wanted to stop relying on the Williams family, I had to grow up on my own. The week before exams, I practically lived in the library. Nathan was always by my side, and I ran into Emma almost every day. We formed a camaraderie, like comrades in the trenches, supporting each other through our studies. After the exams, I generously offered to treat them to a meal. The three of us happily agreed to go to a hot pot restaurant near campus. The Williams family would never let me eat something like hot pot, but now I wanted to indulge. However, my joy was short-lived. I received news that William had been hospitalized. Panicking, I left Nathan and Emma behind and rushed to the hospital by cab. My hands were trembling the entire ride. When I arrived, I saw Victoria and Bella already there. Victoria, wearing her usual high heels, walked over to steady me when she noticed I could barely stand. William raised me like his own grandchild. If it weren't for him, I might not even be alive today. He was like my real grandfather, and the thought of losing him terrified me. "Grandpa's fine, Ollie. You look terrible," Victoria said beside me. Bella also approached, frowning with visible fatigue. I shook my head, realizing I was already crying. "What happened to Grandpa?" "A sudden heart attack. He's in surgery now. I found the best specialist, so he'll be okay," Victoria reassured me calmly. Only then did I relax enough to sit down on a nearby bench. But Victoria quickly let go of me and stood several feet away. I looked up at her, then at Bella. A bitter smile crept onto my face. The two of them stood 3 meters away from me, as if being too close would infect them with some kind of disease. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it, but my thoughts were entirely on William. The next 2 hours of waiting felt like an eternity. The doctor finally came out and told us that the old man was fine and had been transferred to the ICU. I refused Victoria and Bella's suggestion to go home and rest, insisting on staying at the hospital with him. The next morning, the first thing William said when he woke up was, "Ollie, why are you here?" His concern for me made my eyes instantly well up with tears. "Why are you crying, child?" "I'm fine," William said as he patted my head. At that moment, Victoria and Bella walked in together. Victoria's eyes glanced over me without stopping, and Bella didn't even look my way. Their cold and dismissive attitude made my heart tighten. Watching William chat with them, I quietly left the room. Once I was sure William was stable, I returned to school as quickly as possible. I just didn't want to face those two anymore. I asked Charlotte to help me find a job and applied to stay on campus during the holiday. During the day, I would visit William at the hospital, and at night I worked at a bar. To avoid further questions, I lied to William, saying my professor had asked me to assist with a project. Victoria and Bella didn't react much when they found out I wasn't going home for the break. One evening, after having dinner with Charlotte, I went to the bar. To my surprise, Bella showed up with some friends. Charlotte, unaware of our relationship, escorted them to a private room. I had no choice but to brace myself and ask them what they wanted. The moment Bella saw me, her gaze locked onto me, sending shivers down my spine. I hastily took their order and retreated as fast as I could, feeling ashamed of my fear. Why should I be afraid of Bella? I hadn't done anything wrong. Still unsettled, I went to the staff room to take a break, only to find myself cornered by Bella. "Ollie, what are you doing here?" she asked coldly. Looking at her, I couldn't help but find her utterly ridiculous. "If you can come here to spend money, why can't I work here?" I shot back. Bella had always been controlling, something I used to mistake for sisterly care. But now, they were the ones who cast me aside. Why should I continue to endure this suffocating control? "Are you out of your mind, Oliver? Working in a place like this? Has our family ever mistreated you?" Bella snapped, clearly furious. Her words were cutting and unrestrained. I looked at her coldly, suppressing the sadness in my heart. "This is none of your business," I said, brushing past her in an attempt to leave. Bella, however, was no pushover, her strength honed from years of martial arts training. She easily pinned me down. "Oliver, are you okay?" Charlotte came running over from a distance. Bella's murderous glare shifted to her, pinning her in place. "Get out," Bella shouted at Charlotte. Charlotte turned pale but refused to back down. "This is the staff room. Let go of him, or I'll call the police," she said firmly. Bella let out a cold laugh, then looked back at me. I was terrified. Bella had always been a rebel, someone who didn't play by the rules. Her tactics were not something a straight-laced person like Charlotte could handle. "Charlotte, this is my sister. I didn't tell my family I was working here, and she's just angry," I explained, forcing a reassuring smile. Charlotte looked at me skeptically, clearly unconvinced, but eventually left, casting one last worried glance over her shoulder. "Oh, so Ollie's grown up and has a little girlfriend now," Bella teased as she ran her slender fingers across my cheek. I pulled away, feeling a wave of nausea. "Let go of me. I need to get back to work," I said firmly. Thanks to Bella's antics, there was no way I could continue working that night. I had to ask my manager for the night off. The manager, noticing Bella trailing behind me, gave us a knowing smile and sent us out the door. Victoria's car pulled up just as we stepped outside. Fuming, I climbed into the car, staring out at the passing scenery, unwilling to engage with Bella. During the drive back to their home, Victoria seemed to piece together what had happened. Back at the house, I waited angrily for Bella to speak. She shrugged nonchalantly, lounging on the sofa with her legs crossed. Victoria, looking exhausted as if she had just returned from the office, rubbed her temples. "You two are being ridiculous," she said wearily. "Bella, listen carefully. I'm an adult now. I can support myself and take responsibility for my own life. I don't need you two to worry about me anymore," I declared. "And supporting yourself means working in a place like that?" Bella sneered. "If you want to be independent, I can find you a proper job. Your health isn't suited for bar work." Victoria's cold tone ended the argument. A sense of helplessness washed over me. "I know my own body. I like this job," I tried to reason with her. Bella let out another mocking laugh. "Do you like the job or do you like the people there?" she quipped. Turning to Victoria, she added, "Is this what you wanted? Look at the kind of people Oliver surrounds himself with now. Don't tell me this doesn't bother you." "Ollie, it's time to choose between us," Bella said. "Stop it, Bella," Victoria and I shouted at the same time. I felt utterly drained. "I'm choosing neither of you," I said, retreating to my room. I couldn't understand them, nor did I want to continue this suffocating confrontation. I knew they wouldn't let me leave that night, so I packed a large bag, determined to leave first thing in the morning and not come back for a while. But perhaps my emotions had been stretched too thin. I quickly felt utterly exhausted and collapsed onto the bed, drifting off to sleep. In the haze between dreams and reality, I thought I heard Victoria let out a soft sigh. The next morning, while no one was around, I grabbed my luggage and returned to school. My job at the bar had been discovered by Bella, which meant I couldn't go back there anymore. Otherwise, she'd definitely show up every night to catch me in the act. Honestly, I couldn't understand their behavior. Why were they distancing themselves from me yet trying to control me at the same time? Even as sisters, they were overstepping. William recovered quickly and was discharged from the hospital. After accompanying him back to the family home for dinner, I made no effort to linger, trying my best to avoid the two sisters. Seeing my anxiousness to leave, William let out a heavy sigh. I felt a pang of guilt but really couldn't bring myself to face them. Charlotte helped me land another job at a bubble tea shop. This time, it was a day shift. The shop was located near one of the city's top high schools, and senior year students often came by after school to buy bubble tea. Business was booming. The girls in particular loved to come to my counter to place their orders. The shop owner quickly noticed an opportunity and put up a sign, "Buy 10 bubble teas and get a photo with me." I refused, half laughing and half crying at the idea, but the owner sweetened the deal by offering me a higher commission. Reluctantly, I agreed, and business only got better. I was often so busy that I barely had time to breathe. Charlotte occasionally came by to help out. She had a tutoring gig nearby and got along well with the shop owner. With her around, things became much easier for me. And so summer flew by, and the new school term was just around the corner. One day a group of girls was noisily discussing the news. They said that the CEO of the Lawrence Corporation was getting engaged to the eldest son of a prominent political family. The cup in my hand slipped and hit the floor with a loud crash. "What's wrong, Ollie?" Charlotte quickly bent down to help me pick up the mess. I stared at her blankly, then shook my head. Victoria getting engaged was inevitable. This had always been her path. What did it have to do with me? I shook off the thought, composed myself, and resumed serving customers with a smile. That evening, William called me. He asked when I would come home. Not wanting to worry him, I promised I'd return the next day for dinner. The following day at work, Charlotte stopped by again. She looked stunning, wearing a cute blue floral dress that gave her a playful and charming vibe. "You look amazing today. Got a date?" I teased her with a grin. To my surprise, Charlie blushed furiously and avoided my gaze. My chest tightened with an indescribable feeling, but I brushed it off. After work, Charlie waited to walk home with me. As we strolled along, my mind kept racing about how I could face the Lawrence sisters without raising William's suspicions. "Ollie, I like you," Charlie suddenly said, stopping in front of me with a resolute expression. I froze, unable to process her words. "I mean, will you be my boyfriend, Ollie?" she continued. Without giving me time to respond, she leaned in and gave me a light peck on the cheek. "Get in the car." Victoria's icy voice startled me. I hadn't noticed her pulling up by the curb. She was glaring at me with fury. I glanced at Charlie, pale and stunned, then at Victoria, exuding an aura of cold anger. Gritting my teeth, I climbed into her car. In the rearview mirror, Charlie's small figure grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely. Only then did I avert my gaze. Victoria, seething with rage, pressed down on the accelerator, and the car shot up to 120 miles per hour. "Victoria, are you insane? Slow down." "Insane? You drove me to this madness." But instead of heading to the Lawrence estate, Victoria took me to an unfamiliar villa. Upon arrival, several bodyguards dragged me out of the car and into the house. They tied me up. It was absurd. A while later, Bella showed up as well. The two of them flanked me, one on each side. Despite their identical appearances and expressions, their auras were distinctly different, yet both terrified me at that moment. Bella knelt in front of me, her fingers gently grazing my face. "Ollie, who do you choose between the two of us?" "You're insane, Bella. I choose neither of you," I roared in frustration. Victoria stepped forward, gripping my jaw tightly. "If not us, then who?" Her gaze was sharp and terrifying, making me shiver uncontrollably. "Ollie, be good. If you have to choose, why not choose us both?" Bella smirked with a sinister charm that sent chills down my spine. "You're both crazy," I stammered, my voice trembling. "Victoria, you're about to get engaged. Bella, you too. I see you both as sisters." Victoria's eyes reddened, and her lips brushed against my ear. "Ollie, there's no engagement. I can be yours alone." I stared at them in panic, mumbling, "You're insane. You're both insane." From that day on, I was confined to the villa with guards posted at the door. Victoria had someone inject me with muscle relaxants, and my phone was confiscated. I had no idea how they managed to deceive William, but my world now consisted solely of the villa's interior. The sisters alternated their visits, never appearing together. Victoria would hold me, gently stroking me like a pet. Bella, on the other hand, was more possessive, leaving marks on me that Victoria would seethe over when she saw them. I clenched my fists and remained silent, while shutting myself off from everyone else. I refused to communicate with any of them. I didn't speak, didn't respond, showed no emotions, no reactions. Isabella would often get so furious at my demeanor that she'd throw things, while Victoria would use her cold, detached voice to slowly profess her affection for me. In my heart, I could only laugh bitterly. They didn't even see me as a person. Due to prolonged mental torment and my deliberate irregular eating habits, I ended up with a bleeding stomach one afternoon when Isabella came over. The floor was stained with the blood I vomited. My face turned ashen, and sharp pains shot through my chest. Isabella was so frightened that she froze for a moment before helping me up and rushing me to the hospital. I was quickly wheeled into the operating room, and I faintly heard Victoria's trembling voice questioning Isabella about what had happened. In my half-conscious state, I grabbed the nurse's hand and whispered a string of numbers. When I opened my eyes, I was lying in a private hospital room. With a bleeding stomach and a recurrence of my heart condition, it felt like my body was no longer my own. William sat by my bedside, his face filled with guilt as he looked at me. I forced a reassuring smile for the elderly man. The truth is, I had found some tools, thumbtacks, in the mansion, and carefully calculated Isabella's visit to swallow one. Victoria was far too composed and intelligent. She would never slip up or give me an opening. But Isabella, she would lose her cool and send me to the hospital. Holding the nurse's hand, I had stolen William's phone number and asked the nurse to contact my family to cover the surgery fees. William, blindsided by my orchestration, stumbled upon the truth. It was too cruel for the old man, but I didn't want to die at the hands of those sisters. "Ollie, how did you get so thin?" "It's Grandpa's fault." William wept as he spoke. I reached out to hold his trembling hand and shook my head. From William's words, I learned that the long-term injections I had been subjected to had worsened my heart condition. The thumbtack I swallowed tore my stomach, requiring the removal of 1/3 of it. This desperate, self-destructive act wasn't the resolution I had wanted. "This is all my fault," William muttered between sobs. "Those two girls, it's all my fault. He couldn't stop blaming himself, but how could I hold him accountable? I thought to myself, though I couldn't muster any words. The intense pain and multiple surgeries had left me dependent on a ventilator, my faint heartbeat barely sustained. Perhaps not wanting to upset me further, William quickly wiped away his tears and patted my head, as he used to when I was a child. I stayed in the hospital for over a month. During that time, Nathan and Charlotte came to visit me. Charlotte cried when she saw my condition, and I smiled to comfort them. By the time I was discharged, neither Victoria nor Isabella had shown up. Victoria's engagement with the SU family had also fallen through. I didn't ask William for specifics, and he didn't volunteer any information. After leaving the hospital, I told him I didn't want to return to the mansion. Saddened, William embraced me and handed me a set of keys, saying he had bought me a new apartment near the school so I could live there instead. I didn't want to accept it, but William sternly asked if I intended to disown him as my grandfather. Unable to bear hurting him further, I reluctantly took the keys, resolving to repay his kindness in the future. I missed the start of the school term, as William insisted I take another semester off to recover. He hired 2 nutritionists to prepare my meals every day. On weekends, I would visit him at the mansion. For about 2 or 3 months, neither Victoria nor Isabella reappeared. My mind wasn't at ease. Why had they done those things to me? The question lingered like a thorn in my heart. One day, as I was heading to the store to buy some household supplies, I saw a familiar car parked at the entrance of my apartment complex. It was Victoria. Of course, she had found me. After months of absence, she looked gaunt, her typically composed demeanor replaced with visible anguish. When she saw me, her eyes filled with pain. I sighed silently as I looked at her. What was meant to come would always come. There was no avoiding it. That was a truth I had come to understand during my time in the hospital. So I opened the car door and got in. All I wanted was the truth. "You're looking much better, Ollie," Victoria said as she drove me to a quiet Japanese restaurant perfect for a conversation. "You're looking much worse, Vicky," I replied calmly, surprising her. She froze for a moment before offering a faint smile. "Ollie, you've really grown up." I stayed silent, staring at her. How could I not grow up? She was the one who refused to believe it. "Ollie, we can't go back, can we?" Victoria reached out, as if to touch me. I pulled away. "I just want to know why," I said, my face expressionless, staring at her. I wanted an answer. "Because we love you." Hearing those words, I couldn't help but laugh. Victoria watched me, and then her face crumpled in pain as she closed her eyes. Finally, for the first time, she opened up to me. She said that she and Isabella had initially cared for me as a younger brother. But on my 18th birthday, Isabella caught her secretly kissing me. The 2 of them had a huge fight. I vaguely remembered that birthday. Victoria and Isabella had told me I was an adult now and could have a little wine. I drank too much and passed out. When I woke up, what I was dealing with was the inexplicable distance between 2 people and me. Victoria covered her face, her voice filled with uncontrollable emotion. "I don't know when it started, Ollie. I developed a possessive desire for you. I began to envy how effortlessly you and Ethan could bond. I started wanting to lock you away. I never expected Ethan to share the same feelings as me. Listening to him talk felt like listening to a stranger's story. My heart was almost devoid of waves. So, Ethan and I made a pact. We would both distance ourselves from you to see who you would ultimately choose to be closer to." As Victoria finished, I almost let out a bitter laugh. "What do you take me for? A tool to prove your bond as friends? Or a pet you've raised since childhood?" I asked coldly. It seemed they had never considered what I wanted. "I'm sorry, Ollie. I was wrong. We were wrong." For the first time, I saw Victoria lose her composure in pain. Tears streamed through her slender fingers, carrying a melancholic beauty that I had no interest in appreciating. "Vicky, let's just leave it at that. I'll visit William regularly," I said as I stood up, feeling there was no need to continue this conversation. Victoria looked at me in agony, as if wanting to say something, but I no longer gave her the chance. I turned and walked out of the cafe. The sun was shining brightly outside. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. In the distance, there seemed to be the faint image of Isabella riding a motorcycle. Without even glancing at her, I turned and left. After ending my leave of absence, I applied for an international exchange program. Following 6 months of language studies, I finally stood at the airport, ready to head to Los Angeles. Charlotte insisted on applying to the same university as me, despite my repeated explanations that I only saw her as a friend. Once in Los Angeles, I pursued software design. After developing an intelligent AI software, I obtained a U.S. patent. The earnings from the patent allowed me to establish a software company in LA. Charlie became my business partner. The company grew steadily, and to my surprise, I became one of LA's rising business elites. Charlie also became a sought-after CEO in the city, with numerous companies attempting to poach him, all in vain. 2 years later, we expanded our business into China. Charlie, busy with his new boyfriend, handed over the responsibility of signing the return contracts to me. I reluctantly agreed, thinking that it had been years since I last visited William. When the plane landed at the airport parking lot, a motorcycle and a car simultaneously came to a halt. 2 identical faces met each other with a smile, and I was standing at the beginning of an unknown yet promising future